What's up guys, Cinder here with another Cypher video. In today's video I have a setup guide on the map Icebox. I will be showing tripwires, cameras, and cages, one-ways, so that whenever you play on Icebox and in your ranked matches you know exactly what to do. I'll be splitting this video by sites, so A, middle, and B, and then I'll go through a dry run through of setting up each site so that you'll have a good understanding of how I set it up myself. I've also posted tons of other educational videos, so if you guys enjoy that type of content, make sure to check out my other videos. With that being said, let's get on to the setup. First, we're going to be going to the A site and setting up all of the tripwires. There aren't tons that you can do until the round starts. This is a very basic one. This will catch any player trying to push into site either from the ramp or if they jump on the ledge. They can't crouch on this one, or they get hit in the head by the tripwire, and they can't jump it even if they go onto the ledge. This one's pretty safe. Next tripwire is also really standard, does the same thing, but on the other side, catches players trying to go on the ledge or on the ramp. They can't jump or crouch under it regardless of which way they go. These are both pretty standard, but they usually get shot very easily. This next tripwire is quite situational, but it allows control of the tube. A lot of players will try and sit in here and kill players through middle, so it's somewhat safe, and this last tripwire can only be put down whenever the round starts. Occasionally you'll be able to get players with these tripwires, but they're all pretty standard and get shot pretty easily. Next, we'll be doing the cameras, and you'll have to do a jump crouch as I just did from tube up here so that you can place these at the highest position. You'll want to jump and place the camera so you can get it as high as you can, and it gives you more visibility seeing into the tube as I just pinged, all of rafters, near default plants and next to your tripwires, plus spawn. This next camera location will be placed from the same area where you're standing. You'll want to do a jump throw so that you can get it to the highest location possible. This allows you to see all the front side, back side, and all the previous spots mentioned, but it comes at a risk because you can be shot as soon as the round starts, so you have to be very quick whenever you do this. Next camera location will be placed from tube. This one is quite easy to throw, and you'll need to do a jump throw like shown again. This one is also easier to break if they come from a main, but it can be unexpected if you've been throwing cameras in different locations. This also allows you to see a better view of default plant, which is extremely useful, and that's it for the cameras. Next is the cages. This will also include the one-ways, so you have these two really default cages that will block wherever your tripwires are if they were to run into them, but this is usually a dead giveaway for most of your tripwires, so that they win on those two tripwires that are on the ground, this third one for the other one across the way. The next will be more difficult one-ways. So this one way that I set up is supposed to block mid, and you aim at this wall and tuck yourself in the corner. Now the problem with this, even though it's super simple, leaves a small little gap on the left side. I have spent the time to figure out where exactly you need to aim so that you don't leave this gap and get your teammates killed. You'll tuck yourself in this corner like mentioned before, but you'll aim a little bit above. Doing this will have zero gaps, and your teammates or yourself will be completely safe if you're up against this little wall that I aimed at previously. I'll give a good view of how the one-way looks for you and how to use it. And then I'll show how the enemies will see if they are on the outside trying to push in. As you can see, they'll be able to see nothing and will basically be dead if you were there shooting at them. Next up is another one-way, and is very useful with your tripwires and your camera. You want to line yourself up against the front of this wall, and where it turns orange, aim a little bit below it and throw the cage. Super simple to use, and I'll show and demonstrate how it looks. So you'll want to stand on this back rafters. That's where you'll get most use out of your one-way. And the camera, like I mentioned before, will be able to see all of the action, so you can pop your one-way as soon as they're coming out.
Cage triggered.
Enemies will not be able to see you at all. I'm going to show you how it will look if they are coming to you. As long as you're not on the floor level, enemies pushing into you will not be able to see your location. This is why I usually recommend playing rafters for this one-way, because you'll be able to see them entirely and they can't see you whatsoever. As mentioned previously, with this one-way mid, I also sometimes will throw a tripwire mid just so I'll have the proper timing to use the one-way and know exactly whenever they're pushing through middle. Next, we'll be going over the tripwires at middle. For the most part, a lot of these tripwires aren't super useful, so I would recommend setting up stuff at A or B. But if you are forced to play mid and you have no other option, I'll be at least able to show you where you can place them. So for the most part, kitchen will almost always be set up. This will allow a lot of your teammates to not have to watch through tube if the enemies decide to go there. And the next few tripwires that I'm going to show cannot be placed until the round has been started. This next one, I rarely use this, but it's still an option, placing this inside of kitchen window so that enemies can't just jump in and walk behind you guys. This next one is actually quite useful, but you also don't get a lot of time to set it up. Basically blocks under tubes so that enemies can't go a mid to B split. This fourth tripwire is really useful, but you have to place it when the round starts. Place it where this wall is boarded up and allows for a wallbang that I'll show in the future. Like mentioned before, you can't place these last two tripwires until the round is started, but they are quite useful. Being able to place this one a little bit deeper gives your team a little bit more info, and this one also just in case the enemy team tries to lurk mid and doesn't kill your team. Next, we'll be going on to camera spots. Most of the really good cameras in the middle cannot be placed until the round has started, but they give tons of information to your team. This first camera will almost always be shot, but gives your teammates a good view if anyone is lurking or if they're rushing middle. The second camera is actually a lot better, gives your team a bigger view of the mid spot, but will be shot just as easily as the first one. The reason these two cameras are super good is because you can place them late round, not just immediately, and just ping them every once in a while rotating and get a good view of what's happening in the round. These last two cameras are a lot more safe and don't give you as much information, but are a really good tool to keep mid just in case you rotate, so you know if the enemy is pushing while you've left. A good demonstration of this would be if you were to go to A site and you quickly get on your cameras to check if anyone's shift walking a smoke. That, or you can rotate to whatever site you prefer, jump, and while you're mid jump, go on your camera. This will keep the momentum of your character, allowing you to rotate, and also keeping information on the map. Next, let's get into the cages and one-ways. For the most part, there really aren't that many cages other than the normal ones you throw inside your tripwire, but in middle there are two really strong one-ways that I have. To throw these one-ways, you'll need to tuck yourself in the corner of this barrier and aim at the top of this crate. Once the round has started, you can throw it, and it'll land on the little edge of the second container. The next one way, you will want to aim at the edge of the window seal, and then you'll aim up towards the snow mound, the top of it, and throw your one way. Both of these one ways take tons of practice to use and throw consistently, but whenever you've done it enough, it becomes quite easy. Now I'm going to show how these one ways work for you and how it would work for an enemy if they're pushing into you. So first, if you were to pop this left one, it covers most of middle. This left one also covers if they are coming out of tube. Just a little bit of safety precaution. You don't have to use both of these or any of these, but these are very useful to use every once in a while. If an enemy is pushing into you and you're standing boiler, which is where I'm shooting right now, they'll be unable to see you, and in order for them to even attempt to shoot you, they would have to run forwards. And at that point, they're dead. Now this one way only works if you're standing on the mid ramp, because if you're on the low ground, they can see your entire body, which makes the one way useless. I mentioned this tripwire before inside of tube, and I will show why it's somewhat useful now. So if the enemy team is running into tube and you have, for instance, this one way here, and they sneak past, you can throw a cage and wall bang the player as they're going through it, because it is a completely spammable area on the map, right where I'm shooting, and they'll be dead within seconds. Next, we'll be moving on to C site, and we're going to start with the tripwires. So first off, in this area, you will want to refrain from putting tripwires in this deep corridor, because enemy players can jump on this tube and jump over all tripwires, as shown now. Any player who were lurking and were able to jump over the tripwires could easily kill one or two players. So to counter this, you're going to want to put your tripwires a little bit further away from the tube, where a player could not jump over it. For the most part, I will place it near the center where those two tubes connect, and that is too far of a jump for a player to make. Next tripwire will be on the other side of yellow, which is this big container that I'm right next to. This will be pretty useful to place. I like placing it further back so a player cannot peek out fully without just either destroying my tripwire or walking into it. If they were able to, they could probably kill 1 or 2 players on B without anyone being aware and win themselves around. Next, another important fact is you don't have to have 2 of these tripwires here. For the most part, I'll put 1 and I'll just play 1 of the tripwires here on this B side and allocate 1 of these tripwires towards the middle area, because for the most part, a lot of teams, especially higher elos, will not just go B main. Players will either go up tube, which I put a tripwire there before and I showed previously, it's still extremely strong, or they'll go under tube and you can place the tripwire that I am about to show right now. This tripwire that I'm showing it seems a little difficult to place, but once you've placed it once or twice, it's pretty natural, and it'll almost always get a player caught in the tripwire if they're not expecting it. Next, we'll be talking about cameras on B side. So there aren't tons of cameras, and they're all around the same spot. I like this one. Most of the time I'll place this just because it covers under tube, and that's what a lot of players seem to like to favor on this map. You can place another one that's right next to it and cover a little bit of a deeper angle towards the tube area. These aren't too different, just depending on where you want to place it and what angles you're trying to get. This next camera will be a little bit more aggressive and will almost always be shot if a team is coming into it, but it'll give you the info that you need that they aren't going A. I will place this only if I'm not sure if they're going to go A side. If I feel like the enemy team is going A or going mid, I will place the other cameras most of the time. Another thing that is really strong about this camera is that you can leave it here without showing yourself if you know they're going B, and wait until the enemy has planted the bomb. Same with this camera as well, because what happens is a lot of teams will set up their post plant positions and you can ping a player and they'll either get spammed through the smoke that'll be down, because there's almost always 1 or 2 smokes down because of an omen, and you can figure out where 2 or 3 players are playing their post plant. Next will be the one ways. This is a mid one way that blocks tube. You aim at the 4 and go left until your crosshair reaches the edge of that container. To use this one way effectively, you're going to want to play from top container, and it'll block all of the players from seeing you coming from middle. This one way is extremely strong but very situational, seeing as it's hard to place, especially since it can only be placed once the round starts. Any player coming from under tube will not be able to see you, and if they were to push forwards, they will immediately die, especially with the combo of the tripwire that I had placed previously. This next one way is extremely easy to place, and one ways all the players coming out of tube. You will want to aim above the camera onto the top of the ridge. This one way will be played from the back of kitchen and can easily see all players who are coming through. If you have this tripwire that's played for kitchen, it's extremely easy for you to pop it and then rotate and kill any players coming out. I haven't used this one way very much, but it's still an option, especially if the team is extremely mid heavy. So it is an option. Unfortunately, this box isn't wall bangable, but any player coming out, as you can see, will have absolutely zero view of you at the back of kitchen. So they are extremely open to being killed before they can even react. These last 3 one ways are all thrown from the same spot. This first one will be at the green container, aiming to the right of the center area. Throwing it will allow it to latch on the lower container below. The next one away will be from the numbers and aiming to the top of this little ridge. The third one way will be towards the center of the front of the container, aiming at the center level of the sun, and throwing it will allow it to land. Now you can practice these are extremely easy to use. I know that it looked a little complicated, but they're extremely easy to throw, and you can actually be quite lenient with how you throw them, except for the first one, and they'll land for the most part. Demonstrating it, you'll want to be on the ground to shoot the one ways, shoot players coming out of them, and anyone that's coming into the one ways cannot see anything. For the most part, these are the cages that I enjoy using. They're pretty easy, but there's still really basic ones, like the ones I'm throwing now on the ground, that you can use just to kill players if they're pushing out and punish them. I will sometimes save one for myself just to protect myself, like if I was playing in this tube. I'm trying to wall bang where this tripwire is. I don't want players shooting me back immediately. Also, I will have a cage down so it blocks where my bullets are being sprayed through, so I'm not easy wallbang target. Or I will put this one way up so that if an opponent is trying to swing me from the right side from yellow, I'll be pretty safe after wallbanging. Next up are two situational one-ways. This first one-way, you will want to aim to the left side before it reaches all this center clutter, and then aim towards the middle of this black box. Making sure you're against this front barrier before the round starts, you throw the one-way as soon as the round starts, and it will land properly. The second one-way will be aiming towards this wall, making sure you're towards the center of it. You'll be aiming towards the middle of the black box like you did before. Previously, aim up. You are at the center of that little divot where I aimed at. There's this line that lines up with it. Throw the one-way, and you now have two one-ways for B main. I happen to use these too much, but there's always options for situational one-ways in case the team is really heavy in B main. You throw this, back up, and they're all unable to push now, and you stall, effectively giving your team the ability to rotate just in time. Finally, I'm going to go through a dry run on every site. First, we're going to start with the A site, and I'm going to show you how ideally I will set up. I'm going to do this under the 30 seconds of every round, just like every other player, so you can see the time that I have left and how I will set up if I'm trying to defend just by standards, not knowing how the enemies will play. So just as you've seen me do, I would usually throw both of those tripwires on the ground, and I will definitely throw a cage on the left side to hold that left side tripwire. Then I'll line myself up to throw this one way, probably one of Cypher's strongest things, and throw this camera. I don't have much time left, the round's kind of already started, and I throw my camera down. It's a very tight squeeze. I'll go back towards rafters and play for my one way, have my teammate play on the left side for the second cage to pop, and I will play the round accordingly. Most of the time I do not throw this cage for middle, but it's still an option just in case enemies do end up rushing there. Now if I'm playing middle, there's not a lot of setup that you can do here. I will almost always go towards kitchen like I'm doing now and throw my tripwire for tube. This will allow a lot of the mid pressure to be alleviated, and there's not a lot of setup that you can do until the round has started. So I'll either go towards A or B, throw a tripwire, then I'll have 0 left. I'll wait for my one way, sit in this corner, chill out, and then throw my one way for the left side, saving myself one more cage. If I end up not going towards A or B, I will leave one more tripwire for middle so that my teammates cannot be flanked if I decide to rotate. And then I'll throw a camera up and use it and ping it every once in a while so that I can check if enemies are pushing while I've rotated off the mid area, if enemies haven't already pushed. Finally, we'll be looking at the B side. I really do enjoy putting a tube tripwire like I did on middle. It's not always required, but sometimes I'll set it up. I will then go for my one-way setups here because they are extremely easy to set up if you're already in kitchen. I'll usually throw the first cage and tripwire that you just saw there, and the second one in case they rush out from yellow. After that, I'll throw my camera that'll look towards tube and set down my tripwires. This doesn't give me tons of time, but I can rotate safely and play off all my one-ways and rotate if I need. Your job on Cypher is really to delay as much as you can, so these one-ways, especially if they run out towards yellow, will just help stall and give your team plenty of time to stall the enemies from planting and from your enemies taking away positions. This camera will really help the under tube area, which is what a lot of enemies like doing whenever they go B. They'll split B. So your camera will help control a lot of the map. And that's it for the Icebox Cypher guide. If you'd like to see some Cypher setups live, you can find me on Twitch. I stream 6 days a week, and I'm always willing to help people get better. If you guys enjoyed this video, please feel free to check out my other videos, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what other videos you'd like to see in the future. Peace out.